So how long do you guys think a body can last after you die? I don't know about you, but I've always wondered this, and the ancient Egyptians somehow figured this out. We have mummies from over 5,000 years ago, and that's a long time. So today I'm going to talk about why did the ancient Egyptians make mummies, what was the point, how they're made, and who was actually mummified. Um, the significance of mummification is much more than just preserving their body for the afterlife. They believe that the body is the storage container for the three parts of the soul, and without it, the soul is lost. The souls are lost, and the person ceases to exist. So the first mummies were made by accident. People would just bury their dead in the sand without any coffin or anything, and the heat and the sand would dry them out completely. And this was the best way for them to preserve their bodies so that their spirits could stay together. But then, as the societies changed, they started, using coffins and other things, and the heat could no longer get to them. So they had to get creative and figure out some new ways. So those who performed the mummifications, they had lots of experience in anatomical, so like with your body, and they were religious leaders, so they were priests as well as doctors. So back to the three souls part, they believed that it was essential for you to survive in this life and in the next with your whole body completely together. So the actual process of making a mummy was a ritual and was more spiritual than just wrapping a dead guy up. So they believed that this life was one of suffering and limitations, and in the afterlife you could become a god. You could have these special powers, and you can only have these special powers if all three souls were together. So then after a body would be successfully mummified, it would be transported to a burial site. Symbolically, it would start at the west side of the Nile, cross over into the east, symbolizing the west, which is the land of the living, going to the land of the dead, which is the east. So let's dig into how a mummy was made. So a completed mummy took roughly 70 days and many, many steps. The first would be to purify the body. They would take it to a separate building, and they would wash it, say prayers over it, and anoint it so that it was clean. Next, they would take it to the pernifer, or the beauty house, which they would begin to preserve the body. They'd start by removing the brain because they believed the brain had no relation to one's identity. It was useless. So they do this in two ways. One, by sticking a hook and taking large chunks out through the nose, but this would often disfigure the face, which was undesirable. The second way was similar, but they'd stick a thin, wire in, and they'd swirl it around and make the brain into a liquid, and then pour it out, and then just get rid of it. Next, they would make a small cut on the left side of their stomach, pull out all the organs, and then they'd be mummified along with the rest of the body. The first mummies, they would leave the heart in because they believed that was the most essential part of your identity. But later on, it'd make the body not as mummified, so they started taking it out and using it separately. So the next is the most important. This is the drying out process. They did this by using natron, which is a solid state hydrated sodium compound that is only found near Salt Lake, so it's very expensive. This was packed into the body and around it. According to the Smithsonian Institute, there's an experiment done in 1994 that found that it takes roughly 580 pounds of this salt to completely dry out a human being. In the next 30 days or so, the salt would sit on it so it could be completely dry. And then after that, priests would wash all the salt off and out from the inside. They would use oils and spices on the body. The oils would make the joints and the skin more soft so that it didn't snap off when it was being wrapped, and the spices help with the smell, because as you can imagine, they smell pretty bad. Next, they began the wrappings, and this was the most spiritual part of it, because they believed the wrappings would protect the body from outside sources and help guide it to the afterlife. So they would use hundreds and hundreds of yards to wrap these bodies, tons and tons of material. And they would write spells on it or use pieces of paper, put spells inside the fold, and use trinkets and amulets to help enchant the body. Several times throughout this, they would pour warm resin over the body and rewrap it to help keep it airtight. When the mummy was completed, they'd place it in a coffin, or usually the rich, they'd have it very much adorned with gold and precious jewels and stuff. And then they'd be put in the burial chamber. If they were higher class, they'd usually get their own. It'd be filled with many of their earthly possessions, and often animals would be mummified with them to help guide them in the afterlife. So this complicated process was not for everyone, though. It's very expensive. Some of the items, National Geographic shows that it takes some of the most more expensive items to complete a mummy are the natron, all the ointments, the resin, the linen, spices, oils, incense, myrrh, and palm wine. And most of these items are very expensive, can only be afforded by the highest class. So therefore, mostly the original mummies were all of noble birth or the very, very rich. And then as the Egyptian society changed, everybody wanted to mummify because they knew that if they couldn't, then their body would be lost forever. So mummification became more of a business instead of, more religious. It still had the religion attached to it, but now you can make a bunch of profit off of it. But when you get this, you get varying degrees of a good product. So the cheapest ones, it'd be a few layers of cloth. They wouldn't use the full amount of salt, so the bodies would be still kind of dry, not really dry. They'd decay quickly. Only a few layers of linen, no spells, no amulets, nothing fancy. And they were always buried with a bunch of other ones just like them. They never had their own burial site. And they were only put in simple wooden boxes. They did not have the fancy gold ones. So, I bet you guys are all dead tired of hearing me speak, so I'll wrap this up for you. So mummification process is very long and a very religious ceremony. It's more than just preserving their body, it's preserving the rest of their life in the afterlife. So next time you feel completely dehydrated and you're out in this hot sand, just remember what it feels like to be buried in it.